and welcome. Blackstar Artisan 15. A very well built amp. It's one of the hand wired ones, but these amps can be troublesome. One is the bias runs extremely hot on them, and they've got very high HT voltage. This one has got a strange fault on it. We'll just have a look. So if I turn up the volume gets full up, you can hear. If I turn the tone full up, it goes away. So if I turn the tone up on the other channel, it also goes away. But then we end up with another slight hum. There's very strange things happening on this amp. And let's try it in the 5 watt mode. So it doesn't do it in the 5 watt mode, just does it on full power. Now, oh, well, there we go. Doesn't do it. Very strange. So that, I wonder if that's a valve, you know, that's doing that. I wonder. So that's all over the place. I wonder if that's a tube, some problem of some description. Right, we're having a look inside, and you can see what beautiful workmanship there is in there. That is really well done. So I've got this thing running, and it's frying and whatnot, but that fault now seems to have disappeared. So the last one of these I looked at, the output tubes in this, which are EL84s, were biased at a whopping 17 watts. And what surprises me is that if we look down here, if we could just, we probably can't see through there. I can't see what the output tubes are. The preamp tubes are JJs. But a friend of mine had one of these, and he put a set of JJs in there, and they lit up like 200 watt light bulbs, because they just couldn't take that 17 watts. There's so much HT on these. In fact, probably get a meter and just have a look and see what this one's like. Do we get, so that fault is intermittent. So I'm just going to get a chopstick, because like I say, there's a lot of voltage in here, so I need something to do a bit of poking around with. So there we go, 13.5 drop, 120 ohm resistor, 359 plate cathode. So let's do the maths. Yeah, 20.19 watts of dissipation. How on earth is this not red plating? So what is that? Is that over? That's almost, that must be what, 150, 60% over. Well, that's 12 times 1.6, so that's 160%. You get 19.2 watts. So this thing is on fire. So yeah, that is a light. So those tubes are not going to last very long in there. And to be honest, it's amazing. This transformer's only lukewarm. You'd expect it to be low, and that must be one hell of a transformer. So yeah, they are absolutely frying. So yes, what are to do about that, I wonder. Now the problem is, you see, that most people with the L84s, you'll see most amps, and they've got, maybe if they're 15 watts, they've probably got 325 volts, plate to cathode, something like that, even a bit less sometimes. How far can you push an L84? Well, I've read on forums some people have pushed them to over 400 volts. So we've got 359 volts plate to cathode. So if I increase that resistor, that will lower the dissipation, but it will increase the HT voltage plate to cathode. So it's a very fine balance. I have done this before, and I think we got that down to about 12 watts, and I can't remember what we put in it. Although you're probably looking at how this is fried, you probably think, oh, he must have put 10k in it. Yeah, you know, what are they trying to achieve with this headroom? You know, something that they did with the Vox AC30s apparently in the early days, from what I've read. You know, they bias the tubes, but these, I mean, 20 watts, how on earth? And this is why when you see these, they've got electro harmonics tubes in, because they're the only brand of tubes that will stand this amount of HT. And I've just been looking through that grill, and although the preamp valves are JJ, I can't see what's on the power amp valves, but I don't see any red paint, which is obviously their logo. I think Pink's at the door, you can always tell because she's hacking away at the rubber seal on the door. There we go, just let Pink in. So yes, what to do with this? Well, this thing is, honestly, you could heat the room with it. It is on fire. The fault now seems to have gone away. We don't seem to have that fault anymore. Definitely not, it's not there now. So is that a tube? Is that, I don't know what that is. But one thing I do know, we are going to have to, we also had some frying bacon. One thing I do know, we're going to have to do something about that bias, aren't we? Because that is just a light. So there we go, 13.5 drop, 120 ohm resistor, 359 plate cathode. So let's do the maths. Yeah, 20.19 watts of dissipation. How on earth is this not red plating? So what is that? Is that over? That's almost, that must be what, 100 and, I don't know, 150, 60% over. Well, that's 12 times 1.6, so that's 160%. You get 19.2 watts. So this thing is on fire. So yeah, that is a light. So those tubes are not going to last very long in there. And to be honest, it's amazing. This transformer's only lukewarm. You'd expect it to be glowing. That must be one hell of a transformer. Now the problem is, you see, that most people with the L84s, you'll see most amps, and they've got, maybe if they're 15 watts, they've probably got 325 volts, plate to cathode, something like that, even a bit less sometimes. How far can you push an L84? Well, I've read on forums some people have pushed them to over 400 volts. So we've got 359 volts plate to cathode. So if I increase that resistor, that will lower the dissipation, but it will increase the HT voltage plate to cathode. So it's a very fine balance. I have done this before, and I think we got that down to about 12 watts, and I can't remember what we put in it. Although you're probably looking at how this is fried, you probably think, oh, he must have put 10k in it. Yeah, you know, what are they trying to achieve with this headroom? You know, something that they did with the Vox AC30s apparently in the early days, from what I've read. You know, they bias the tubes, But these, I mean, 20 watts. How on earth? And this is why when you see these, they've got electro harmonics tubes in, because they're the only brand of tubes that will stand this amount of HT. And I've just been looking through that grill, and although the preamp valves are JJ, I can't see what's on the power amp valves, but I don't see any red paint, which is obviously their logo. I think Pink's at the door, you can always tell because she's hacking away at the rubber seal on the door. There we go, just let Pink in. So yes, what to do with this? Well, this thing is, honestly, you could heat the room with it. It is on fire. The fault now seems to have gone away. We don't seem to have that fault anymore. Definitely not, it's not there now. So is that a tube? Is that, I don't know what that is. But one thing I do know, we are going to have to, we also had some frying bacon. One thing I do know, we're going to have to do something about that bias, aren't we? Because that is just a light. Right, so something else I've just noticed about this Blackstar, I've got it on the bench now. These electrolytic caps are only 450 volts working. Now when this amp's running and all the valves are conducting, that first node there's drawing 380 volts. Now this amp has a rectifier tube. It also has a standby switch. There's a general consensus with these amps that you're not to use the standby switch, and I've just realised why. Because the inrush, when you switch that in on the capacitors. Now I've got the meter on there, and I've got it in standby, just purely for a test. So I'm just going to move this camera so you can see the meter. So let's see what happens when we flick in the standby. Well, just for a second that flashed up to 394, which is still within tolerance of those. So we are going to have to find it. So here's the problem now. I've got a 300 watt, sorry, let's try again. I've got a 300 ohmite resistor there, 10 watts. If I put that into this amp, it will reduce the dissipation on the tubes, which is all good, but it will increase the HT voltage. Now, it probably won't increase it above 450 volts, but it will be getting closer. But then when we use the standby switch, then that flash of 390 we've seen may be a flash of more than that. You know, it may be more than 450, it may not. But this is a balancing act to get these right. But this amp can't be left to run at 20 watts. The reason is it's the old saying, the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And it amazes me that I mean, the transformer's warm, but you know, it's not on fire like that Origin 20 that we looked at, and I'll be putting the video up for that. On this Origin 20, the transformer was glowing on that. We found the dry joint, but the customer had changed the tubes in it. Now again, is this hot transformer a problem of is it just a problem with the amp, or is it because the tubes that it's put in, although it's cathode bias, are the tubes that it's put in just simply drawing more current, and therefore that is then making the transformer run hot because it's you know, already on a limit. Right, I've jumped in this 300 ohm resistor, and I've got a couple of meters. One's monitoring the bias and one's monitoring the HT. Check out the HT now, 401 volts we've got now on that first node. 401 volts. So we're going to have, I think, about 15 volts less plate to cathode, so we've got a whopping probably a whopping 385 volts or something like that. I've not checked that yet, but I'm guessing we're going to be around that point. Right, so now to do some calculations. Well, I was about spot on with the guess on that plate to cathode. It was 385 volts. It's now running at 11.51 watts, this amp, and that is about spot on at 100%, which is fine for this amp. So 300 ohm resistor in there. The downside now is we've got nearly 400 volts on those plates. So check that out. How odd. So that's just being caused by some screen issues. So if I push that down, that cable down now, just hone in there with the camera. So if I push that wire down there, look, onto the board. So strange how that's. So let's just lift that wire, and I'm being a bit careful here because I wouldn't have thought there's any voltage on that, but, and there we go, and that's got rid of it just by lifting that cable up. How simple is that? So I don't know what's happened there over time. Maybe somebody's been in here at some time, pushed that down, and oh no. So if we turn that off again, oh weird, what is going on there? There we go, look. Why did they never screen this cable, I don't know. So I wonder, let me just put this camera back on the tripod. Well, look at that, would you believe it? And all I've done there, we're just honing, all I've done there is push these wires together, stuck a tyre out around them, and then pushed them into the black wire. So there you go, just a simple lead dress issue there. If you look at the other one on the other channel, you can see they're pushed right close together, and even on the tone they pretty are close together. So that seems to have cured that problem. So how that problem started in the first place, we'll never know, because it doesn't look like anyone's ever been in here. So maybe just we're being carried around, they've just gradually moved apart, don't know. But anyway, that's cured that, so I'll clip that. I might put another tyre out around the all three of them and just clip that one, tidy it up, and that'll do. I think that's mended that. The only conundrum now is to go away and do a bit of research and try and brush up on what I can remember from doing the last one about these capacitors. Quite a bit of frying though. So I still think there's either a tube not quite right, or maybe a see if we can see which channel that's on. This channel's very quiet. Right, I've finished up putting a 250 ohm resistor in as a bit of a compromise. That gave me 12.2 watts dissipation, so that's just brought that HT voltage down a shade. So that's done now. I'm going to leave that as it is. So the mystery of these two caps, why this one's 100 microfarad and this one's 47. Apparently when they first made these in the factory, they put a 100 microfarad cap on the first node. Now this has got an EZ80 rectifier tube in, so that's a bit of a schoolboy error in my book, because it clearly says in the tube data that you can't use more than 50 microfarad. So they've obviously realised that, and they've just swapped them over. So that's why you've got that big 100 there and the smaller 47 there. Why they've done that, I don't know, and you can see the difference in size. Why they've done that, I mean, if that originally started out being a 47, then why is it now 100? It don't make sense to have a higher microfarad capacitor on the second stage than on the second node than the first node, so I don't know. But anyway, that's how they are. Can't see as it's doing a deal of harm. So we've got us 250 ohm 10 watt ohmite resistor in there. You can just have a close look there. He's in. Now we've managed, by moving those leads about and pushing them together, we've got rid of that noise, so we've cured that problem. All that was just a screen thing there, I don't know, with those cables or whatever, but we've cured it. So that's sorted those out. Now I do remember that the one of the jack sockets is loose, so we've got that to tighten up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip this amp over. I'm going to take that grill off that's over the tubes, and I'm going to check these preamp tubes, because we've got this frying, which you can hear. So I've got to get to the bottom of that. That's either a tube, dirty tube socket, or it is a plate resistor. Now looking at these plate resistors, they look like real vintage resistors, so I'm wondering if they are carbon comp rather than carbon film. Maybe, I don't know. I don't really know. Does anybody know? If someone knows, it'd be grateful if you put that in the comments, because that's what they look like to me. Right, we're working through these plate resistors to find this frying, which you can hear. You listen. There's quite a lot of frying going on there. So what I've done is I've lifted this resistor and I've just jumped it back in. Now have a listen. I'm going to jump another resistor in now and have a listen. Now listen. We've got this 100k resistor jumping in. So I think we can say from that that resistor is all over, madam. So I think I'm just listening now. Let's see if there's any more. But I think we've got that, so we'll swap that resistor and that's another problem solved. However, this switch on the front here, this 5 watt 15 watt switch, so when you switch it into that 5 watt, it sounds absolutely dreadful. Just like a horrible distortion on the end of the notes. When you flick it out, the amp sounds beautiful and absolutely gorgeous. And I've heard people say before that those switches are a bit rubbishy on there, and actual fact, how they've got that working has really surprised me. I think most people think that those switches switch the output valves into triode mode, but they absolutely don't. The switch is between the phase inverter, or one side of the phase inverter, and one of the tubes. And if you look in there, you can see a 2 meg 2 resistor and a 220k resistor side by side. Now from what I've worked out, there's another 220k resistor there, and you can see, where is it, sorry, down the side of that cap there, that big 47, you can see a 220k. Those are grid leak resistors, and what happens when you click that switch is it cuts out that 220k and switches in that 2 meg. But on this side, on the other side of the phase inverter, where the 220k is there, it's just normal. And I'm scratching my head thinking, well, surely that must be way out of balance. It sounds way out of balance. It does cut it cuts the wattage. So that, you know, most people think, they seem to be thinking that's a triode pento switch. It isn't. It's nothing like. In fact, nothing like is an understatement, because I've never seen anything like that ever. It's the most strangest thing. I don't know what that's about. So all I can say with this amplifier, don't use that 5 watt thing. In fact, I'll be honest with you, that's the only bad thing on this amp. This amp is awesome. I mean, yeah, the bias situation, I've run this amp up, as I say, and just tested that, and it's now running at 12 watts on the dissipation. It sounds gorgeous. The amp is beautiful, but that switch there is just a no-go. So just don't, if you get one of these, just don't use that switch, don't use that 5 watt setting. And I'm not big on gadgets like that anyway. You don't really need things like that. Now, the output tubes in this, I did take the tubes out. The output tubes in it are odd, and believe it or not, one is a JJ, so how that didn't evaporate at the dissipation it was running at previously. The other one's a Messer tube. The paint's changed colour on the JJ a bit, which is understandable. But it's biased up nicely. Now the EF86 that was in this was electro harmonics, and it tested okay, but it was a tiny bit weak. So I've dropped a nice yellow print mullard in there, and that will do nicely. Thank you very much. So I'm going to solder that resistor in, and this amp I think is more or less done. And there we are, that's fitted, and that's got rid of that frying, so that's good news. Right, so what we're going to do now, I'm just going to check around and make sure that most of the nuts, well, all of the nuts on this amp are tight. I know there's a loose socket on there to tighten up. I'm just going to check these screws in the board and whatnot. I've checked some of the transformer ones, some of them were a bit loose, not too bad, but a bit loose, so I'll nip those up. And we're about ready to go on this, I think. Right, we've got this Blackstar Artisan 15 all back together, so we're going to have a bit of a listen. So that's the channel with the EF86. So I'm just going to move in now, swap channels. And this is a channel with a this is a single 12AX7. So there we go there, quick listen, nice clean bell-like tone. It's a beautiful sound. This amp really, the only thing this is missing is a reverb. Get a nice reverb on there and you've got a really, really beautiful amp. So that's the Blackstar HT15. We've watched it being repaired, we've had a listen to it, and we've had a look at the schematic. So excuse me wearing my coat because I've just been out to the workshop and it's absolutely throwing it down with rain here. So thanks for watching, and thanks for listening to me waffle on about my amplifiers and things, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you wish to do so, and I will see you in a future video. You all take care. Bye bye for now.